It is now time, way overdue time, to get serious about data centers. What do you people want? What can you do? Here is an idea, a citizen's manifesto of crimes against humanity and communities for compensation in relation to the impact and destruction done to citizens, residents, communities, their ways of life, dramatically impacting all economy, health, environment, and future life for years and decades in the future. To hold all town, city, county, state officials accountable legally, financially, ethically, and morally for allowing, without full transparency, the takeover and destruction of resources, property, finances, and citizenry without correct information, oversight, environmental and financial permission, review, or transparency to include citizens. The willful, knowing, and intentional allowing the destruction of environmental lands and utilities, including water, air, noise pollution, both privately owned, community owned, and by citizen taxpayers, protected lands, ecosystems, wildlife, agriculture, public parks, and forests. The consequences of such data centers results in the loss of real estate values, small and large, private and commercial, within communities. The increase of health issues within all community populations, including family, pets, and the effects on cattle, pigs, chicken, and all other animals, including natural wildlife in the area. The physical, mental, and spiritual harm caused by the intense and sustained noise pollution reaching far above acceptable legal limits 24 hours a day. The willful, knowing, and intentional taking, using, polluting, and not paying appropriately for city water and electricity, leaving citizens to foot the bills and have to live with little to no clean, healthy water in their communities. The willful, knowing, and intentional polluting of air and atmosphere in regions reaching out miles from each community with one or several data centers, impacting farming, animals, and agricultural production, health and livelihoods, even to the loss by death of animals and offspring. The willful, knowing, and intentional destruction of local parks and recreation lands, community, county, state, and federal, which have been used by residents and visitors for years, decades, even centuries in some locations. Compensations are rightfully due for violations of and to residents, citizens, communities, and their sovereignty by those who own, fund, support, and profit from each data center constructed. These can be listed as crimes against humanity, community, and environments. Each village, town, city, county, state, affected and effected by air pollution resulting from the heat and discharges from fire and steam turbines, stacks, generators operating 24/7 every day, all year. Water pollution and excessive use and taking of community water normally used for drinking, cooking, washing, and irrigating, leaving communities with dirty, polluted and depleted water systems. Noise pollution far beyond legal approved health limits. Day after day, never being turned off. Homes and animals in the proximity of 100 yards up to several miles are affected and effected dramatically with health and wellness issues that increase within hours, days, and weeks of such constant exposure. It is generally known that there are no compensations offered, demonstrated, or given to communities, small and large, who have been inundated with data centers without too often, without permission, oversight in any way, shape, or form. There is great question as to the corruption and bribery and intimidation that goes on behind the scenes in order for big companies to get their way. The transparency, the greed, the corruption has become so invasive that the general public feels completely and utterly trapped. This might be appropriate for those who believe that they are in charge, but as a humanity and as behavior for a humanity, this is not appropriate behavior. And the consequences for everyone, the super wealthy and the super poor, in the end, will be catastrophic. Perhaps it is time for the consciousness of those who are deeming themselves above the law to step back and put humanity back into their life. Fair and just compensation to communities and individuals, people, the environment. Life is fair. Life is about giving and receiving. Energy given out, energy given back. That's what you expect in reciprocal for taking people's lands. You expect, you demand, and will receive great profits, leaving those who were taken advantage of with nothing except the disaster. Thus, I believe it is time and fair for compensation for pain and suffering, destruction of all ways of life, for individuals in the communities, for the way of life of the natural wildlife, for the environment, for the very earth that sustains us all. As you can see from the graph, computers were initiated and developed in the 60s, and that was probably a beginning byproduct of the space program. And then they've developed through the 70s to the 80s. That's when I had my first experience with computers around about 1987, 88. I learned on the very first TWA reservation airline system, which was the very first reservation system in the world to have the capacity to do domestic and international flights. Then in 1992, the internet was opened to the public. The internet was the evolution from the communication systems that they had between the military governments and then the higher education universities, meaning Harvard and Yale and Oxford, the big ones. And then in the early 90s, they decided, why not? Let's use this to collect data and information and have people in learn about the world and connect with each other, and then let's see where that goes. Well, we know where that's gone, and has brought us to today. That's the reason why all of these data centers are required now. The blunt truth is, and many of you already know it, and some of you are still blind to it, those in power, whether it be the governments, the elite families and corporations, what we call the 1, 2, 3, or 5% of the wealth distribution in the country and on the planet, they want to get rid of the normal, everyday people. We have no use to them. We have become obsolete. Isn't that a terrible thing to say about humanity? We've become obsolete in their minds, because they believe that AI, which A is the first letter of the alphabet, it's a number 1, and I in the cycle of 1 to 9 is a 9, which is the last part of the cycle, which is the beginning and the end, the alpha and the omega. Well, yeah, AI is the beginning and it shall be the end, literally and metaphorically, probably. The huge growth of where we are now with the data centers, and the fact that there is no restriction, there is no oversight, there is no arbitration, there is no care about what the general public want. They don't even ask permission. They just take the land, which in turn takes the water, destroys the air, pollutes through noise, abuse, pollutants, you name it, held accountable because they're above account. We can do what we like. That is their mantra. That is the attitude. We can poison their food, poison their land, take away all of the realness of humanity, all the realness of the food, and print it, 3D print it with our technology. We can poison all of the forests. We can poison all of the water. We can spray and spray and spray, and they can't stop us. They can't do anything. That's where we are. That is the reality we are in. Most specifically in this country, because everything is above the law, and the people in that top echelon and below who feel entitled are morally and ethically and spiritually bankrupt. The country is morally, ethically, and spiritually bankrupt. That is the brutal, brutal truth at this point in time. And the only way out of that is for the millions of really good people who live in communities everywhere, who have a good heart, who respect life. In whatever form that is, they have a free mind. They can make their own decisions for their lives, for their families, We are sovereign beings. Each individual is a sovereign being. From the day we are born to the day we pass, we can make our own decisions. We don't get on with everybody, but it doesn't mean that we perpetuate hate to such a degree that it eats our soul and heart away, that we decide we're going to completely destroy someone and a cultures that we don't like. Morally and ethically, we are destroying ourselves before we destroy anything else at the end of the day. With the taking of the land and the water and all of the elements and leaving communities high and dry, I've been given a task to write a manifesto. I shall present that in a shorter video and explanations. But this is the only way that the people are going to be able to stand to take back the moral, ethical, and real truth and power and sovereignty of this country. Until we meet again.